What's up, guys? This is Caleb. I was fortunate enough to join our friends Josh and Brian from the Worst of All Possible Worlds on a special episode on a subject that was kind of something I've wanted to cover for a long time, but never really had the proper avenue to. And they were gracious enough to bring me on and let us talk about that. This is the first hour of a show that you can get the second part of on their Patreon, and that is patreon.com/worst of all.
It's August 10, 2018, and the sun begins to set on yet another beautiful late summer day in Seattle. The Seattle Mariners are in Houston for Game 2 of what will end up being a clean 4-game sweep of the Astros.
The Seattle Seahawks had just kicked off their preseason game. At that time, the team was in flux. Paul Allen had just died. The Legion of Boom was officially gone. We had lost a substantial amount of players in free agency, and anxiety in Seattle was at an all-time high.
At the Mariners' home stadium, Safeco Field, excited concertgoers flow through the gates, buzzing in anticipation for the second of 2 sold-out Pearl Jam home show concerts.
Just 11 miles south of the ballpark, at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, a man begins taxiing down the runway in a Bombardier Q400 74-seat twin-turboprop passenger airplane. As a baggage handler for Horizon Air, a regional subsidiary of Alaska Airlines, this man has plenty of experience around these airplanes, but he is not a licensed pilot, and he is certainly not authorized to be flying this plane.
Air traffic control signals to the cabin. The pilot does not respond. At 7:33 p.m., the Q400 lifts off. 1 hour and 15 minutes later, it will crash into the woods of a barely populated nearby island, killing its sole occupant while turning him into an instant folk hero for some of the internet's most poisoned brains. This is the story of Richard Bebo Russell, the Sky King of Seattle.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds. I'm the Worst of All Possible Joshes.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians. And you may notice that AJ is not here.
He's scouting out locations at a book depository in Texas. So this week, and you may have heard that from our intro, we're going to be doing something a little different.
Yeah.
Normally on our show, we just do case studies and we talk about a piece of media or a set of media by a creator or something like that. This time around, we are talking about an event that actually happened, how it was covered contemporaneously, and then how it was received.
Yeah.
Content advisory up top for this. We are going to be talking about suicide a lot.
Basically the whole episode, yeah.
And we are also going to be reading a whole bunch of posts by some of the most cracked racist weirdos you can possibly imagine. For some of you, that might be a perk. I'm just throwing that out there. And to do this story, I should welcome our guest now because he actually pitched this story to me, and I'm so excited to dig into it. He is one of the co-hosts of the podcast Western Kabuki, which is the premier podcast about what's going on online. He's also a co-host of the NFL podcast 60 Minute Drill, and you may also know him from his unparalleled work in tormenting a pervert named Grums online. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
You told me that this is a story that you have long wanted to tell on a podcast. So why is that? What is it about this story that still resonates with you?
For context, this happened like in my backyard. And while I did not actually see Bebo, I did hear him. And the reason that I know I heard his plane is because all other air traffic was shut down at that time. I guess I just saw a lot of parallels in his life to mine. A little younger than me, but roughly the same age, same area, same, I guess, attitude towards work. Although maybe I think he acted it a little bit. You know, it just felt really personal. I saw a lot of myself in him. And you know, I remember talking to my dad that night and I was really like upset by it. And he's like, I don't know. He asked me like, why is this so upsetting to you? And I couldn't really answer. And that kind of stuck with me over the years. I, at the time, had a podcast, but it was kind of like a proto-Western Kabuki. We were doing the same kind of thing, just in a much more crude format, and it didn't really fit the narrative. What made it like more personal, what made it fit at least the context of the internet, is how I guess the extreme online right and some of the conspiracy QAnon types and whatnot tried to claim him as theirs when I just thought that was a little bit perverse and incorrect way to look at it. And I don't think that the story has ever actually really been told in the right way, at least in hindsight.
Well, and you on Western Kabuki talk about the weird online right quite a bit. And Brian and I have both been on the show, so everybody should go check those episodes out. We'll have links in the show notes. How does this sort of reflect the kind of stuff, this story, reflect the kind of stuff that you talk about on your show?
On the, I guess, Western Kabuki, the most highbrow way to pitch that show is to say it's like a subculture analysis of different kinds of ways that people use the internet to fight loneliness or something. And this is actually kind of in that alley a little bit because, you were talking about, the 4chan types who took this guy and kind of lionized him, and the QAnon people that we'll talk about a little bit later that thought he was like a based operator or something like that. And there's this kind of like tentacles that go into bigger and deeper themes sociologically.
Well, we might as well dig into some of that sociological stuff right now, because just to give a little bit of background on Richard Russell and his whole deal, this guy is going to be the protagonist of our story. And there was a really good article in Rolling Stone by Tim Dickinson, which I think we're just going to quote here. Bebo Russell loved Jesus, craft beer, and cargo shorts. He was not the kind of man you'd peg for Grand Theft Airplane. Those who loved him describe him as compassionate, reliable, God-fearing, and goofy. He was raised in a military family with a reverence for fair play. A dedication from his family on his high school senior yearbook page cites the Bible, 2 Timothy 2, verse 5, which reads, "Whoever enters an athletic competition wins the prize only when playing by the rules."
Born in the Florida Keys and nicknamed Bebo as an infant, Russell was raised from boyhood in Wasilla, Alaska, outside of Anchorage. He attended the same high school as Sarah Palin, graduating in 2008, the year that Palin was picked for the GOP ticket. Russell was a three-sport star for the Wasilla Warriors, placing 5th in the state in discus and 4th in wrestling in the 215-pound category. He was a quiet leader, recording school athletes' personal bests on their weight belts. His is still in the school gymnasium.
Russell was a brick of a young man, square-shouldered and stout with long, powerful arms. On the football field, he barreled for 327 yards, scoring 6 touchdowns as a standout senior fullback. He embraced contact, and according to friends and family, got his bell rung with some frequency. At the time, concern about football brain injury had yet to enter the mainstream. Alaska would not implement a concussion protocol for school sports until 2011.
With a shock of half-groomed brown hair and a face full of freckles, Russell was funny, extroverted, a handful, relatives would later say. They all had Bebo stories. As a high schooler, he hosted booze-free bonfires for friends. On his MySpace page, misbehaving looked like shotgunning cans of Mountain Dew with his bros. In one senior yearbook photo, he is posed atop a boulder, legs out to the side, his long arms holding up his blocky frame. His head is thrown back with a coy expression as if the prompt had been, "Give me a sexy walrus." If only we had AJ right now. "You bring such humor and unpredictability to our lives," reads his family's yearbook dedication. "As you write the rest of this story, always remember you are loved." So from this profile, I mean, we get the sense of a guy who seems pretty, like, normal. Like, just a normal kind of, like, all-American guy, right?
Yeah, there's some very Baptist-coded behavior in there.
Yeah.
The bonfires where they shotgun Mountain Dew, that's a little close to home. And, like, yeah, growing up I don't really know much about the Keys. I don't know that much about Wasilla, Alaska, but these are kind of redneck places.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty country. Wasilla's close-ish to Anchorage, but it's a very, very small town, and it produced the Palins, and I think you can kind of infer the rest from that.
And he moved on from Alaska to Oregon, where he was at a university, but he didn't get a lot of playing time in college. And then he moved on to the town of Coos Bay, Oregon, and that was where he joined Campus Crusade for Christ. Now, Brian, I know you know about Campus Crusade for Christ, but Caleb, do you?
Not my wheelhouse, not my milieu, so to speak.
Okay. It's our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's an old organization that got a lot of juice during the Jesus movement of the 70s. And they also produced the Jesus film. If you've ever heard of the Jesus film,
I've heard of it, but
they made that.
Sadly, it's still on my queue.
Apparently, they're just called Crew now, CRU, which is insane.
That is quite a rebrand.
The thing that you really ought to know about Campus Crusade for Christ, it's kind of like a number of other organizations, such as Young Life, where the whole point is let's get young people to be more Christian. You know, really,
it's a social group for college students. Josh and I went to a Christian college, so we didn't have Campus Crusade for Christ. It's kind of precluded.
The whole campus was a crusade for Christ, baby.
Although the Gideons would come by and hand us Bibles for some reason.
But he was basically a high school mentor at Campus Crusade, and it was also while he was doing Campus Crusade that he met a woman named Hannah. And they got married in 2012 and moved to Sumner, which is a Seattle suburb east of Tacoma. Now, I don't know anything about Sumner, but this is obviously your area of subject matter expertise, Caleb. Tell me about Sumner.
Okay. Everybody assumes a lot about the Pacific Northwest, that it's some sort of like a liberal utopia. Okay. Once you get outside of like the Seattle Tacoma metro area, it gets very Hitlerian very fast. I think that this is like kind of on the cusp of it. I grew up in a town quite like this, where it's like you're at a confluence of ideology. Sumner is a very kind of conservative. So you get all the shitheads that say they live in Seattle and are too scared to walk down the street that say that, but they actually live in places like Sumner.
Right.
It's really small. It's out of the way. There is nothing going on there. Some people like that. It's quaint, but there are like zero job opportunities. And because of that, I think the station of it and everything, crimes, not violent crimes, but like crimes of poverty are a lot higher there. You know, car break-ins, thefts, things of that nature are actually twice as high as the state average. At least, so these are stats from these are 2018 or 19 stats. I tried everything that I pulled. I try to keep from this time, but it's also at this time was 3 times the national average. And part of that reason too was rents in this area were just exploding. I think we were like Pierce County was like the hottest real estate market out of, 2 years of financial quarters. It was something like 6 times or something like that. The rents were just going through the roof. The average rent for a place to live is like $2,000, which that comes into play later when we talk about what he was making. So tough place to be in some ways. Not a fun place to live.
Well, and a big thing about when he was living in Oregon with his wife was they had started a bakery. He co-owned it, but he was kind of learning how to bake from her. And they were both kind of far away from all of their family.
Yeah.
So they moved to a place that would be closer. Of course, for him, closer meant Alaska. And there's no good compromise between like Seattle and Wasilla, Alaska, right?
Unless you want to move to like, I don't know, fucking somewhere up in the Yukon or something like that.
When he ends up working then for the airline, that gives him the ability to get some flights, right? You can get, as an employee, you can fly for free or for cheap. And that is a great lifeline for him to be able to go back to Alaska and visit family.
Specifically to Alaska with Horizon, yeah.
Horizon is a regional subsidiary of Alaska Airlines, which is one of the United States' really big airlines, right? And so if you're doing one of those shorter flights, one of the ones to get you from sort of one of the spokes in the system back to Seattle, you're probably going to be on Horizon Air. Whereas if you're flying from Seattle to, I don't know, Detroit, you're probably going to be on a flight with Alaska. And so Horizon Air serves a number of smaller markets, and they need baggage handlers in Seattle. He signs up, he gets the job, and as part of an online communications class that he ended up taking at Washington State University, he asked his coworkers whether or not they enjoyed their jobs and edited the answers together.
Do you like working as a ground service agent? Why or why not?
I do and I don't. The work here is very easy. It's not that hard. One of the good things about working here is there's good people that work here, and one of the bad things about working here is there's really bad people that work here that are not good workers.
I enjoy that it's a physical job with a lot of different opportunity, a lot of different tasks you can partake in. I enjoy the flexibility of the schedule and the flight benefits. I do not enjoy management.
So, about that management, I've got an article here from August 19, 2018 from the Seattle Times, and I'm just going to quote from it. Brandon Brown, who worked as a Horizon ground service agent for 6 years before leaving in 2017, said that he used to talk with Russell about what trips they would take. Russell, he said, was always friendly and was always reading in what little downtime they had. Every time he'd come into work, he'd always have a stack full of books, said Brown, who didn't recall the titles. He was the nicest guy. Sometimes you can work at places and some of the people there, you'd think something was a little off with them. I never in a million years thought that about him. I just don't understand.
SeaTac was the first city in the country to raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour, paving the way for much larger cities like Seattle, San Francisco, and New York. But SeaTac's law did not cover everybody. Specifically, it doesn't apply to airline employees like Horizon ground service agents.
Brown said the starting wage for ground service agents was about $12 an hour. It didn't sit well with people, Brown said. You had people up working in the restaurants. Everybody else at the airport made $15.
And of course, this is a very interesting example of how the small differences in these wages, of course, for the workers to be fighting amongst themselves, that is exactly what the corporations want, right?
And there was a monthly bonus structure to this job where you'd get like 50, anywhere from 50 to 200, depending on what kind of goals were being hit. And then they started fucking with that bonus structure too, right? Because companies forget why they implement a bullshit thing like a monthly bonus system, which is to keep people in line and keep them calm and keep them working harder so that they can get more of that
Something
money.
to aspire to.
Yeah.
But then they're like, yeah, but that's really expensive, so let's take that fucking away.
Just a quick couple things to contextualize the region. $12 an hour. Remember what I said about what the average rent was there. Even if 100% of his money went to rent, he wouldn't probably be able to afford a house on his own, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Additionally, the commute, depending on what time of day he left, could be an hour or more to make $12 an hour.
And that's driving too. That's not necessarily, taking public transit from there, right?
Yeah. There's no Sumner doesn't have like a line to the airport or anything like that.
A Sumner land ferry.
Yeah.
Another coworker of Bebo's, Todd Bunker, wrote the following in an August 17 opinion piece for The Stranger.
When a lot of your supervisory staff and coworkers are ex-military, you begin to realize what being expendable is. I believe Bebo was acutely aware of that because we all were. It's the kind of dehumanizing situation that could lead to what happened on August 10th.
If the environment itself isn't enough to persuade you that you are nothing more than a cog to the upper management and shareholders, there are plenty of other, even more exasperating reminders. You are making around $3 less per hour than anybody else at SeaTac, including other airline employees, restaurant employees, car rental employees, bus drivers, etc. Although there are benefits. Health insurance and stock options might be nice, but they don't pay the rent. However, a vast majority of ground service agents are men under age 30, so insurance and stock options mean nothing to them. They become empty gestures from a management who knows you'll never use them and thus cost the company little. But that's only one part of the picture. To be clear, the people I worked with were dedicated, hardworking, safety-conscious, attempting to be loyal, all of the things that are supposed to get you ahead in America. But the workers on the ground and our immediate supervisors could barely keep our heads above water. As a subsidiary of Alaska Air Group, Horizon Air is the proverbial red-headed stepchild. It is glaringly clear to everyone who works there that cost-cutting by the executive teams in order to keep the shareholders happy is the main goal. And Horizon is the first stop on that belt-tightening train.
We, the lowest level employees, knew that when the record quarterly earnings report came out, there wasn't going to be any trickle down. When I worked for Horizon, we were cursing our low-wage fate in the break room, while Alaska was spending another $2.5 billion acquiring Virgin America, got to keep up with Delta, and then investing another $2.5 billion upgrading their turboprop airplane fleet to jets. Acquisitions and sexy new jets play well at the stockholder meeting. Increased labor costs do not. Now, Caleb, this was an article that you had sent along. Do you know anybody who works in the industry or anything like that, or was it just something you found? Okay, cool. Say more.
Yeah, I actually I applied to this exact job.
Really?
Oh.
To Horizon at one point, and I had interviewed for it and everything. I don't remember what the circumstances were. I think it was because I had a second job that I liked more, even though it was part-time. It just didn't fit. But I got the hookup for this job from a friend that worked there and did this. This was a few years before this, but yeah, I do know. And this article, there's a part of it that we aren't pulling from that talks about how your shit just gets stolen all the time.
Yeah, they don't have
And
enough lockers for everyone, so
yeah,
you
they
just
don't
have to leave your
lockers, and your
stuff
stuff just
behind.
gets stolen. Your lunch gets stolen.
Yeah.
Which is just insane. Like, that's such a nominal expense.
And yeah, there's no coworkers aren't necessarily anything to each other because they don't know each other because people just leave the job very quickly.
Exactly.
Right. Another part of the article says that there's always a job listing for Horizon.
I'm sure it's the same way to this day. If you're down and out in this area and you really need a job, you could probably, get this same job now because the turnover is just atrocious.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious, so I went on Indeed.com and looked up jobs, right? And I did indeed find a current job listing for ramp and customer service agent for Horizon Air in Oregon.
Hell yeah, dude.
And it was $16 an hour.
Yeah, dude.
All these years later. Just in general, it should be noted that the air travel industry is one of those things where it's either feast or famine. You're either making good money or you're making no money. Per the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median annual wage for baggage handlers in 2023 was $37,660. Median hourly wage there, $18.10. Now, this is compared to the national overall median annual wage for all jobs, which is $49,500, median hourly wage $23.80. So this is not a median level job. They are very much underpaying these people. And again, that median hourly wage just at the national level for baggage handlers, $18. Horizon is underpaying even by those standards at $16 an hour. And just to sort of rant a little bit more about this, right? Like, good paying jobs in the air travel industry do exist. Pilots, co-pilots, flight engineers, obviously that's the big one. And in that same Bureau of Labor Statistics data, we see the annualized wage median for those jobs as $219,140. That's good money. But the thing is, qualifying for those jobs takes years of training and experience. And even flight attendants, who definitely make more than these baggage handlers do, around $75,000 a year industry-wide, they similarly have to put in their time to climb the ranks because generally speaking, those salaries are based on how long you've been doing the job.
And also, flight attendants do not get paid until the doors on the plane close.
That's right.
Even though they are doing their jobs before that point.
And if it weren't for the unions, which all of the airlines except for Delta have unionized flight attendants, there's no way they'd even be making that much money,
Oh, yeah.
So that grunt work, all of the grunt work that it takes to get to the point where you're making a decent wage, that is usually happening not at the big national airlines, but at the regional airlines, places like Horizon. Because generally speaking, these regional airlines are not subject to the same lucrative labor contracts as the major national airlines, nor is there price competition to, to bump those wages up. So in other words, everyone from the flight deck to the tarmac is getting paid dramatically less than their equivalents at Alaska, American, United, and Delta for the exact same labor.
Yeah, that's another really cool thing, that you can work for Alaska Air, but it's not the same as working for Alaska Air.
Right.
Because you're at a subsidiary.
Even the flight attendants, their salaries are what they are, but like a lot of them sleep in like RVs in like their home, I guess, port cities or whatever, and they stay there and they fly around, so they just never actually, they get to travel a lot and it's very cool, but they don't really get to see their family a whole lot because they're constantly on the go, and not an easy job.
No. And I mean, think about all the things that you have to deal with doing that job, all of the fucking bullshit,
Yeah, I mean, this is, especially after 9/11, it's a very, very high stakes job.
Right.
I mean, even before 9/11, right, we had hijackings left and right throughout the 70s and everything. It's a fucking plane. It could crash and everyone die. You have to be aware of that. And you have to be, if you're in those dangerous circumstances, you're the person that everyone has to depend upon. But that's true of, even the people on the ground. They're not necessarily facing that same level of danger, although there's still quite a bit of danger. You're around planes with big turbines and everything. But you are responsible for a lot of very important stuff. If you know people who use wheelchairs, they don't like to fly because those wheelchairs get destroyed a lot. Well, obviously it's because you have weird hiring situations and weird working practices down on the ramp. So no one's going to care about your luggage. They are just going to throw it in there.
Yeah, I mean, they're not paid enough to give a shit about it.
No. No, and they have to have all this clearance. They have to have all this scrutiny. You have to go through security every single time you go to work. That shit sucks. For $13 an hour?
So, back to August 10, 2018. It's 2:36 p.m. Bebo Russell clocks into work at SeaTac. He's wearing a t-shirt that says "The sky's no limit" on it. And it's pretty clear that he has a plan in mind because at 7:15 p.m., he gets onto the runway and gets into one of those tugs, the tugs that pull the airplanes out, and tows that Q400 out onto the runway. He releases the plane, jumps into it, and at 7:33 p.m., Bebo takes off toward Mount Rainier, and all air traffic out of SeaTac is immediately grounded.
And this starts to make its little ripples around. At first, you have like local and aviation reporters talking about some sort of anomalous event happening at Seattle-Tacoma.
So at this point, my timeline of events was I worked for a construction company, and one of the things that I would do is feasibility studies where you go out and look at a piece of land and make sure that it's like, safe and you can build a home there and you don't have to cut down anything endangered, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of times I would just like, oh yeah, I got to go do this. And then I would just leave. So I went to go watch the replay of because it happened the Seahawks had played the day before, but it's a preseason game. Nobody actually cares about it live. So I went to go to a bar to watch it, told my girlfriend to get off. And I got a couple texts from people. And then the bartender was like, oh, do you see this? Some guy stole a plane. That's kind of funny. Ha 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 ha, or whatever. It's like, oh, that's silly. Well, and then you start seeing it become a bigger and a bigger thing.
So you were just at the bar watching this stuff come in?
Yeah. So like, if you look at the flight, like whatever his trip where he flew, he flew over me, directly over where I was at, like twice.
Oh, wow.
I didn't see him, but I did hear it. Somebody outside said that they'd seen him. I didn't really care that much. It was just kind of a silly thing. My thing was I was kind of watching the replay of the game, having a beer, and I was getting a pizza to take home to my girlfriend. And that's what we're going to do for dinner that night.
Got it. So
I wasn't really that invested in it.
You were not avidly following this story as it developed. You were more focused on the Seahawks.
Well, eventually I did, because as time went on, it's like this became a thing and the game goes off. They turn on the news and my girlfriend ended up meeting me at the bar. And we were kind of watching it like just what's going to happen, Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm at home in my apartment in New York, between jobs, about to start like a new really stupid immersive theater thing. And I am transfixed by all of this. One of the things is that Seattle being this hub for aeronautics in the first place, because you have like Boeing and whatever, a lot of aviation reporters are based out of Seattle. So they're also national or Canadian reporters. And so they're sharing stuff, and then their national reporter connections are sharing, on Twitter, back when Twitter was like a place that you went to for stuff besides skull measurements. and so it immediately starts coming to me, and I start seeing all these videos and everything. And there's this big question happening at the time of like, okay, what is this? So around midnight that night, someone actually posted the full feed that they had captured from some source that I ended up starting to clip from. There was a reporter, his name is Jimmy Thompson, he's Canadian, he's not on Twitter anymore, so I couldn't find any of his old posts about it, but he was trying to get all the clips of Richard Russell's radio chatter, and I actually grabbed a couple of the messages that had been missed previously, which means that it's very possible that some of the videos that circulate today are using clips that I took from that feed.
You really were all in on this.
I really was. I don't even remember. I mean, I remembered that I was kind of obsessed with it as it was happening, but no, it was like, it was for a while afterwards.
He did and I should remember this. I don't. At what point did he do the barrel roll?
It was right at the end.
Yeah, 8:43. Yeah.
There are a lot of compilation videos out now, fan cams basically. And even those miss a lot of the really crazy footage that I remember seeing that night of people like on their back porches with this plane very visible and very fucking loud and very fucking low flying overhead.
And we'll get to talking a little bit about some of the response to this, the tributes and things like that a bit later on in the episode. What we're going to do right now is we're going to trace what happened in this flight, and I've pulled some clips from that air traffic control chatter. And I got to say, I also ended up being pretty transfixed by this, just going through it again. And this, 7 years later, right? 7:48 p.m. Again, this is about 15 minutes after lifting off. Bibo comes back around Mount Rainier. He's been off radar up until now, but he now has circled Mount Rainier's summit, shows back up on radar. NORAD at this point has been put on alert just in case this guy is like a terrorist or whatever, because they don't really know what his deal is at this point.
Yeah, for a while he's not on the radio. Like the whole time he's taking off, he probably doesn't even have the headset on.
Right.
And for part of it, he's also out of range.
But once he gets back in radar range and gets on the radio, it's very clear that this is just a guy. It turns out that he's puked all over himself. And
relatable.
Absolutely. And this is what one of those first back and forths sounds like.
Just flying the plane around, you seem comfortable with that?
Oh, hell yeah, it's a blast, man. I played video games before, so I know what I'm doing a little bit.
Dudes rock.
Okay, and you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
Nah, everything's peachy clean. Just did a little circle around Rainier. It's beautiful. I think I got some gas to go check out the Olympics. And, yeah.
It should be noted, it's sort of like 9/11 where, 9/11 was on a very, very clear day. You could get all of this footage from so far away, and that's not necessarily unusual for New York, but it is kind of unusual for the Seattle area to have a sky this fucking clear.
I cannot see the sky right now. Granted, it is not August, but still, we got a show that day.
Yeah. And Caleb, you were mentioning dudes who rock. I mean, Bibo, I think, comes across as a dude who largely rocks. I'm curious how listening to some of this hits you.
It's really hard to describe. It's like the same thing of like when I was talking to my dad about this when this first happened. It's like I get a little bit emotional because like he's just a guy. I think he just wanted to feel something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's this combination. I mean, he's very nice. He doesn't say swear words. He says sort of like close to swear words, but he's also like joking. Like it's still actually unclear if he learned from Microsoft Flight Simulator, according to the FBI documents. They don't ever say if they actually found that.
Yeah, that was the rumor, but we never really got a good confirmation of that.
I mean, the ways that people can learn how to start a plane, he knew a little bit because he had been training to taxi planes and to pull them. But also you can go on YouTube and just see people start their planes. People take video of that. And other people in other articles have said like that's actually a very useful recruiting tool because people are interested in planes. They know a thing or two and they're like, I bet I could do this. And, then they get training. But, he says it in such a jokey way, and he has these other kinds of jokes that he makes throughout the whole.
It's fascinating to me, I guess, to expound upon my earlier answer is like this. We don't know why he did it. And we're going to talk about all that later, of course. But like, to me, it seems like somebody finally caved into a long-standing intrusive thought that they had.
Yeah.
And you get to hear like a real fucking person, how they would sound.
Yeah.
Like living through acting that intrusive thought out. And it's like very human. I don't know, it's just bizarre, but like funny and sweet and a little tragic, obviously. I don't know. It's just a confluence of different emotions.
Yeah.
For me.
Radio chatter is usually so flat and so technical. It's like adjust your bearing and degrees and all of this stuff. And this, if you didn't know that this was a news story and someone played this for you, you'd think this was a joke.
Yeah.
Right? Just a guy who's talking like a guy joyriding in a fucking commercial airplane.
And it's also the thing that hits me too is that like it seems like he's saying this stuff like these making these jokes and things. It's as much to calm himself down as anything else because there are a few times where you can hear the panic come through too.
I mean, he threw up all over himself. Yeah.
Yeah. The air is thin. Like his cabin his cockpit isn't pressurized properly because he doesn't know how to use those systems. The whole reason he went up is because he wants to die. And he knows that doing this is going to kill him. He's doing maneuvers that this plane has never done before or since because he wants it to go out of control and lose it. But also when you're in the middle of a, full hour and a half long suicide attempt, you're going to have those moments of, I should not be doing this. I should not have jumped.
At 8:08 p.m., this is 35 minutes after liftoff, NORAD authorizes an interception of the aircraft. Not a shoot down or anything like that, but an interception. So 2 F-15Cs, which are flying out of Portland International Airport, get scrambled. These are from the Army Air Force National Guard's 142nd Fighter Wing. The airplanes approach, and once again, air traffic control tries to persuade Bebo to land.
There is the runway just off your right side in about a mile. Do you see that? That's McCord Field.
Oh man, those guys will rough me up if I tried landing there. I think I might mess something up there too. I wouldn't want to do that. Hopefully, they probably got anti-aircraft.
No, they don't have any of that stuff. We're just trying to find a place for you to land safely.
Yeah, not quite ready to bring it down just yet, but holy smokes, I gotta stop looking at the fuel because it's going down quick.
Okay, Rich, if you could you start a left-hand turn, and we'll take you down to the southeast, please.
This is probably like jail time for life, huh? I mean, I would hope it is for a guy like me.
Well, Rich, we're not going to worry or think about that, but could you start a left-hand turn, please?
I am so impressed with the air traffic controller throughout this entire thing, because not only is he maintaining presence of mind and sort of providing a, I would say, stable baseline in communicating with Bebo, he's also controlling air traffic for the whole region at the same time. You can hear that between these, he's also doing call-outs to and from airplanes, because again, all air traffic up out of Seattle has been grounded, but there are still planes making landings.
And they're diverting them. Most of them are diverting. I think a couple are landing at SeaTac, but they're generally like, okay, we have to get this plane over to this airport over here and then get this one this way. And he has to talk also like a hostage negotiator, right?
Right.
It's okay. No one's going to beat you up. No one's going to shoot you down. We're not going to talk about that right now. We just want you to make a left turn.
I kind of thought that was, I don't know, it was just funny. Those guys are he's worried about getting beaten up. I don't know.
Yeah,
dude.
like all the Air Force guys are going to run out and just start wailing on him.
They'd have to get out of their chairs first. What with being members of the U.S. Chair Force.
If McCord is a naval base, I'm not sorry.
It's like a joint. McCord is the Air Force. It's a JBLM, Joint Base Lewis McCord. Okay. So it's an Army and Air Force base. There's also, this is another thing that'll come into play later when we talk about the conspiracy angles. Is there's what people don't know this, but like there are military bases all fucking over this area, and there are a lot of naval ones, but this one was Army Air Force.
Another thing that happens during this portion of the flight is that, well, I'll just play the clip.
Heading 250, that's 2021.
Minimum wage. We'll chalk it up to that. Maybe that'll grease the gears a little bit with the higher up. Maybe, yeah.
And this is an example of how you can hear the way that he sort of just cuts in between the chatter of other pilots. But we have a mention here of minimum wage. And this is something that people would really end up seizing on when they were looking for, like, why did he do it? The fact that he mentioned minimum wage being like, was he just so desperate?
This is one of the two clips that people seize on. People see kinship with this.
Right.
People have all had bad jobs that underpay them. Having a poorly paid job and being stuck in it is such a powerless feeling. Whereas taking a plane and flying it when you don't even know what the hell you're doing, he didn't even know to take the brakes off of the tires when he was taking off. Like that's a freeing feeling. You're literally going up into the sky,
I think the minimum wage comment, should be the thing that people take away from the most. Anybody who's just ever worked at a really, really crappy job who's just not making it and they just fantasize about doing something about it, I think can. And it's interesting to me that he says this, and he says the clip that I think we're about to play next. But the thing that like so much of the internet really seized on, and like why I wanted to talk about this, is there's another clip where he says like, I'm just a dumb white guy or whatever.
At this point, they're going back and forth about jail time and that stuff. And then he's like, well, but like, it is pretty impressive what I did here.
Right.
And this is where the conversation turns.
No, you can do that with these things. So if you were to do it, how would you do it?
Well, I'd try to figure out how to use the autopilot first.
On Roger, taxi spot 88 via Bravo, connect ramp.
88 and over ramp at 2057. not concentrate so much on flying the airplane.
Hey, you think if I land this successfully, Alaska will give me a job as a pilot?
I think they would give you a job of doing anything if you could pull this off.
Yeah, right. Nah, I'm a white guy.
So that's kind of the clip I think that some of the worst people on the
Yes.
internet really latched
Yeah.
onto. They don't care about the material aspect of it, the finances, where he says explicitly, at least he alludes to it, minimum wage or whatever. He kind of makes a crack. Oh, I'm just a white guy, and that was, I would say, of the people who continued to care about the story after it ended. That's all they think about is that part.
And it's a little hard to tell how sincerely he believes that comment. It doesn't come from nowhere. Obviously, like, no, they won't hire him because he stole the plane. So there is that jokey element to it, but people hear that, and that's already, if it is a joke, it's a joke playing on stuff that people already say. Oh, I can't get a job doing that because I'm white.
Yeah.
They're not hiring white people anymore.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like, I think it's, I'm not saying that that's not what he meant, but I guess I would say it's just a bit more debatable, because when I heard that live, I just took it in maybe it's just more about me, but I just took that in a different direction of him just kind of making a self-deprecating joke or something.
Yeah,
That also makes
could
sense.
be either.
Yeah,
That's the thing is, you can speculate on it, obviously, but there is definitely this feeling of, his whole thing throughout this entire thing is I'm just kind of a typical doofus,
Yeah. I'm a guy who wears cargo shorts everywhere I go. It was in his obituary that he always wore cargo shorts, and that he'd carry like pastries and things in his cargo short pockets.
Another dude's rock moment, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, as flight control continues to try to persuade him to land, he has other ideas in mind.
If you wanted to land, probably the best bet is that runway just ahead and to your left. Again, that's McCord Field. If you wanted to try, that might be the best way to set up and see if you can land there. Or just like the pilot suggests, another option would be over Puget Sound into the water.
Dang, did you talk to McCord yet? Because I don't think I'd be happy with you telling me I could land like that, because I could mess some stuff up.
Well, Rich, I already talked to him, and just like me, what we want to see is you not get hurt or anybody else get hurt. So like I said, if you want to try to land, that's probably the best place to go.
Hey, I want the coordinates of that orca with the mama orca with the baby. I want to go see that guy.
That, for context, was a news story that was going on. The people out here really really take Orca Watch seriously. There's like various pods or whatever, and one of them had just given birth, and there was some news about that. That didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, this specifically was an orca whose baby had died, and she was carrying it around the water, and was spotted multiple times. The main reason why they're trying to get him to land at McCord is that it was basically, this is a very hard plane to land even for experienced pilots. It's designed to do like really quick takeoffs and really quick landings on short runways. And they knew that the chances of him being able to take this thing down safely on his own was near zero, and that he very clearly didn't have much of an intent to take it down safely either. And so they're just trying to like divert him to like, yeah, we don't want you to land at a fucking airport with a lot of people around and a lot of stuff, but a military base, we can kind of clear everyone away. It's a little bit emptier. You might destroy a hangar or two or something like that. They're even trying to get him to do a water landing later on.
I mean, I know that he was aware of all of this, and you can tell because of the stuff that he says next.
I got a lot of people that care about me, and it's going to disappoint them to hear that I did this. I would like to apologize to each and every one of them. Just a broken guy. Got a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now.
And this is where we have both the levels of confidentiality with like the FBI investigation, with all the other agencies that look into this sort of thing, and with Bebo's family. They have maintained a pretty strict cone of silence on all of this stuff. They've talked to authorities, but they don't talk to the media. He had a brother, stepbrother back in Wasilla, like talk once, like right after it happened, and was like, yeah, I heard him making jokes. That's my brother. But for the most part, anything that's actually about his life, we don't really know. The FBI report redacts most of the information involving his family. We know that there was some kind of intervention that happened about a week before, and that he seemed to be feeling a little bit better afterwards, but he was drinking a bit. What I've seen from a little bit more of the report does seem to imply that maybe he's in the middle of a manic episode, and maybe he had never had one of those before, and his family didn't quite know how to deal with something like that. And that he was having some kind of financial problems, which is not a surprise considering where he lived and the job that he had.
Caleb, was there anything that you had wanted to say about the whole, like, guess I just got a few screws loose and that whole thing? Because I think that's the clip that sticks with me the most out of all of this.
Same. Yeah. I mean, I can just tell you, all these years later, that still made me tear up a little bit. I guess I just see so much of myself in that, you know, and it's just very relatable of everything from also experiencing the rent crisis of Pierce County during this time. Everything was slipping further and further and quickly away of just like home ownership, the idea of it. And I even had a much better job than he did, and I was still feeling it, you know, down to the like mental health and maybe you're drinking too much or whatever. It's like everything all about that just was like, I don't know, when I told you guys earlier in this episode that like my dad asked me why it hit me so hard, because there's like no difference between me and him.
So at 8:30 p.m., Bebo glimpses the Olympic Mountains.
Man, have you been to the Olympics? These guys are gorgeous. Holy smokes.
Yeah, I have been out there. It's always a nice drive.
On 119.2.
But I think I might have a beer.
Yeah, I bet you do. I haven't done much hiking over there, and but if you could start a left turn and turn back towards the east. I know you're getting a good view there, but if you go too much further in that direction, I won't be able to hear you anymore.
All right. Hey, pilot guy, can this thing do a backflip, you think?
So this was a clip that I grabbed back in 2018. Everything is very different now. A lot of years have passed. I think one of the things that drew me in is also just that air traffic controller and the empathy that he brings to this situation, and of course that sort of trademark calm that an ATC has to have.
He really just does the perfect amount of just like a human interaction.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm listening to you.
Situation calm.
It's a great place to hike. It's a great place to drive.
Now, how about we execute that left turn? Like, let's, always bringing it back to the task at hand.
You know, calls him Rich instead of Richard.
Mm-hmm. Pretty soon after this, we get a few more words from Bebo. And Brian, this is the one that you said sticks with you the most, right?
Yeah, this now, I didn't remember this part of it, especially because of the way that he's mythologized now and everything. And so coming back and listening to the whole thing again, I was like, well, this is it. This is the whole story. Because he's up there, he's looking at the mountains. He's executed this thing that he has apparently spent quite a bit of time planning. Because, again, he was able to pilot a plane by himself as a non-pilot. And yet, this moment that everyone celebrates, that everyone idolizes now, comes out through his own mouth like this.
Just kind of lightheaded, dizzy. Man, and, you know, the sights went by so fast, too. I was thinking, like, I'm going to have this moment of serenity, you know, I'll be able to take in all the sights. There's a lot of pretty stuff, but I think they're prettier in a different context.
If it's not super clear to you listening, he said, I thought I'd have this moment of serenity. And it's pretty stuff, but maybe it's prettier in a different context. One of the things that he's doing this whole flight is he's always checking in on that fuel gauge because he's driving this thing fucking fast.
Yeah.
You know,
fast and low.
Fast and low, and he's doing all these maneuvers that, you know, it's going to take a lot of energy to bank that turn and do what else. And he just keeps looking at it and he's like, well, it's the sands in the hourglass falling down, and he's approaching the end of it all, which is what he set out to do in the first place.
Right.
And it didn't feel the way that he was really, really hoping it would feel.
which is
kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
it's awful. I mean, and it's so, I know I've talked about it on this show a few times before at this point, but a few years ago, coming up on now the 3-year anniversary of it, I lost my sister to suicide. And I have to think that there was a fleeting moment there where she too thought maybe it would be worth it to keep going. Or maybe it was because she wasn't able to have that moment that she went through with it. I don't know. But this is where I get so stuck on this idea of like, why can't you see what that other context would be and have the opportunity to enjoy it and be there and live in that way, rather than just giving yourself over to self-annihilation. It hurts. It really, really hurts.
the mythology, it's just so misunderstood, the entire story, which is again why I wanted to do this to begin with. Like, the mythology behind this is he didn't go up there to die, he went up there to live.
God, if I have to read one more fucking comment that says that,
every
I am going to...
every reply, every video, have some
Did you
fucking
actually
guy
like listen? Because you're just projecting your own feelings on it. You're just like, fine, we all do it.
Yes.
I get that feeling, but like, wait a minute. That's not what actually happened, right?
I mean, I think it's true. I think he did go up there to live, but then he found out
it wasn't actually
that wasn't
living.
really what happened.
Like, he thought he would find life, and then realized that there was more life, but he'd already traded that possibility away.
He didn't get this serendipitous moment. All he kind of found up there was like shame.
Yeah,
like, I let my family down.
I think that's a really important point. Actually, the shame. You constantly hear him talking about how, like, man, I feel so bad for like all of the people who are having to deal with my bullshit right now.
He apologizes to the guy in the tower, and he's like, I really hope this doesn't ruin your day. And I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
You know?
And then some. I'm sure he
had to take a lot of time off of work, right? They're very strict about, levels of stress in that job for this reason.
You think about like all of the people who, I mean, it's a slightly different thing, but like train drivers, for instance, who run into and kill somebody on the tracks. This is probably not a dissimilar feeling where, it's not, you don't have that death on your hands, but it feels like you do.
Yeah. If it fucks us up this badly, listening to a recording, now listening to it 8 years later, 7 years later, whatever, like, imagine you actually being on the call with that person and having to say the right things and getting what ended up being probably the best outcome that he could have ever gotten, which still ends with one person dying.
Yeah. I mean, like, to, I guess, his credit, Bebo, he quite clearly does not want to hurt anybody.
Yes.
But you get the sense that he realizes that he's hurting a lot of people.
At the same time, though, he still wants to, I mean, again, we've talked about this a little earlier, right? These maneuvers, it's like, well, I was able to do that. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. And he does a barrel roll and he pulls it off. He ends up just almost skimming the surface of the Puget Sound itself. I think he clears it by about 10 feet.
It doesn't look the way that it does in Star Fox. That's for sure. Because as he's turning over, the plane just basically falls straight down to the water. And then there's some chatter from the fighter jets,
right,
where they're like, oh my God, he did it. Holy shit. They're laughing on the comms.
And then right after the barrel roll, we hear this over air traffic control.
All right, Rich, this is Captain Bill. Congratulations. You did that. Now let's try to land that airplane safely and not hurt anybody on the ground.
All right. Damn it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't want to. I was kind of hoping that was going to be it,
That also, the despair and the anguish that you hear there, that really, really hurts to hear.
Yeah. It's fucking crazy to me. I'm sorry, I've been swearing. I don't even know if you guys
we swear all the time.
We swear as much as you want, baby.
Explicit.
It's fucking crazy to me, just like how he's still he still keeps like you hear that this entire time that he's like this kind of goofy guy, quiet but goofy guy.
Yeah.
He has a sense of humor. Like he's trying to fucking kill him, smash the plane, doing a barrel roll into the fucking Puget Sound, but he's still laughing about it. It's like, this makes me think, because I'm kind of like that too. I have kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, sardonic sense of humor or something. If I was doing this, would I still be cracking jokes up to the very end? I just can't imagine what that feels like to still be having a sense of humor about this when you're dealing with this confluence of horrible feelings of letting your family down and wanting to die and hurting all these strangers even, and you're still able to just kind of laugh it off. I don't know.
And
weird to think about. I don't have a cogent point there.
That's. I think there are a lot of points we have today that are not really cogent points.
It's just feelings. Like that's the thing. Is listening to this just digs up some real strong emotion in the same way that he was clearly out of control of his faculties and emotions at this point and operating purely on adrenaline and impulse. And 3 minutes after doing that barrel roll, the plane crashes into Ketron Island, which is just a small, mostly uninhabited island.
Like 20 people live on it.
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's there's no way to know for sure, but I would imagine, because there are other islands he could have tried to land it on, but those have like structures you could see visibly. I would imagine he probably just thought that this was completely uninhabited, and that's why he took it down there.
Yeah, I think so. One of his engines at this point was already giving out, probably because of the barrel roll. That crashed in the forest and immediately died. And that was the flight of Bebo Russell. It's strange. It's just so strange in and of itself, right? Just the experience of going back, listening to it again, the way that people contemporaneously were also listening in and I think cheering for this guy to be able to finally pull it out and land the fucking plane, right?
Yeah, they didn't realize what the goal was.
Right.
And this was, I don't know, this was a moment built for Web 2.
Yeah.
Such as it was like, here's social media, here's this, you can upload video at any time. So people are uploading things as they happen. They're getting compiled. They're getting threaded. Everyone is seeing all the different fragments of it. And it's almost like you're kind of experiencing the same fragmentation that's happening in his mind as he's in the plane and going this way and going that way. And like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do this. I hoped that would be the end. I still have to do it myself. And there's something about like, there's a mystery to it, especially before the feed came out. You're just watching video. You're just getting like, it's a baggage handler. Here's his name. Here's what's going on. While also seeing the panic of some people on the ground or other people just going like, holy shit, I can't believe that he did. There's footage of basically the whole flight, at least once he got back around the volcano.
Well, he was so low, you couldn't miss it. It was right there.
And I mean, the video footage of him doing the barrel roll is pristine,
So the family puts out a statement, and I'll just quote it here. He was a faithful husband, a loving son, and a good friend. A childhood friend remarked that Bebo was loved by everyone because he was kind and gentle to each person he met. This is a complete shock to us. We are devastated by these events, and Jesus is truly the only one holding this family together right now. So that's it for the story itself, but part of the reason we're talking about this on the show is that the story ends up being so much more than the story itself. So when we get back in the second half, we're going to talk about the way that all corners of the internet reacted to this and how it became something so much stranger.
Hey guys, Caleb here. Just wanted to remind you that this has been the first part of a premium episode that you can hear at patreon.com/worst of all. The second half of this episode is probably more conventionally Western Kabuki-ish in the sense that we read off some tweets and posts from various dark corners of the internet. It's a really good episode, and I just wanted to say thanks again to Josh and Brian from the Worst of All Possible Worlds, and I hope you take a chance to listen. Bye.